Okay, welcome to Go Sea Camping and another episode. This episode is all about how to make money while you're out there cruising. So how do you have an income while you're sailing? It's a good question to ask, and let's see if we can answer it. These are just my own observations and our own experience after 8 years of cruising. So this episode's not really geared up to the liveaboard in a marina who goes out cruising for a few months and then comes back again. This is more geared towards those cruisers who want to actually just go until the visa runs out or the weather turns and they have to move on to another place. And it's not an easy question to answer because it depends on so much. But the best way to go forward is to do something that's based on your own skills that you have at the moment. Learning new skills is great, but like anything, it takes time to develop them to a place where people will be happy to pay you money for them. So building on what you do at the moment is a pretty good idea. Also, if you do have plans of what you would like to do in the future and it's a new area, then you probably need to set up things back at home before you take that on. It's a lot easier to set up the background or the foundations while you're close to or in familiar surroundings than it is to try and organize it all when you're much further out. And this could be anything from a website creation to a shopping platform to someone who can look after emails and daily business activities such as postage and ensuring that taxes and things get paid. If you can set all this up before you go, you find it much easier later on down the track. Not everybody also wants to spend their time tied to a computer or the internet. There are other options out there. You don't have to go down the YouTube track at all. So this is not intended to be in any way a negative or an off-putting video. It's more designed to let you know what's available out there, so you can at least be forewarned or have a plan of action before you just head off there and expect things to work out. Quite often it's very different out there. It's not at all what you expect, even talking to other cruisers, because your own needs will be quite different from theirs. So what do you actually need money for when you're cruising? Food and enough money to pay for bureaucratic stuff like visas and permits, along with immediate boat needs. Other things that you may or may not, depending on where you feel comfortable with, health insurance, boat insurance, other contingency money aside for major boat repairs, things like onboard or offboard entertainment, flights back home, and all that sort of stuff, which is the stuff you can cross off the list of non-essential. And again, that is so up to you. We know people that have no insurance, and we know people that have full insurance, full boat and contents insurance. Both of them are fine. The cheaper the boat, the less you tend to worry about the insurance. There's not so much to lose if it does go. But then on the other hand, there's a lot to be said for full insurance, because if you go for a trip on land or for anywhere, you know that if the boat's not there when you come back, then you can carry on. You carry on life as if nothing's much has happened. Whereas if you come back and you find that there is no boat, then it's a lot more traumatic. But then on the other hand, that sort of stuff doesn't happen that often, and a few years of low premiums or no premiums can add up to quite a large contingency fund if anything goes wrong and you have an accident and you've got to rebuild parts of your boat or somebody else's boat. A good example of comfort levels would be air conditioning and having large refrigerators and freezers. Both those, generally speaking, when you're out there cruising, you'll need to have a generator to run them. Generators, they're another maintenance issue. All those three things break down. They will break down when you're cruising. Whether you want to keep them going and fork out money and time and stress getting parts in, finding someone to replace it and to repair it, is up to you. Personally, we would rather not have that added stress. For us, having some decent fans, a wind scoop and a big sunshade allows us to not have to put money aside or to think about the issues of major gear failures, and that goes with a lot of stuff on board. It is going to break, it is going to fail. What stuff can you fix yourself? What is essential and what isn't. And the more you cruise, or the longer you cruise, the more your sort of ideas of what's essential when you're on the land before you go cruising, and what you feel is essential when you're out there cruising changes. In my mind, in our mind, it was better to go for a much cheaper insurance option with a very large excess, and put the money saved towards emergency fund, or in our case food and kids education, and also purchase a much stronger chain and a bigger anchors. So the longer you cruise, the less important things seemed when you first started cruising, is what I'm getting at here. In other words, you don't need a lot of the stuff that you think you need when you start cruising, and then as you carry on, you find that those things that you thought were important are not important, and those things that you didn't know about become important. Like I said, anchor and chain is a good example of that, and so are sunshades and extra fans. And so the takeaway here is everything breaks and everything requires maintenance on a boat. There's no system that's really is not going to fail at some stage on a boat, and the older the boat, the more often it's going to fail. And even if you've got a brand new boat and it fails, as it will, having to hang around for parts to be flown in and someone to look after it it's just depressing. Why bother when you can go and be enjoying it somewhere else and not have those things to break down to start with. Next section is really where does your income come from? This is where we've been talking to other cruisers as to where their income was coming from. So the first one is they've taken early retirement from the armed services. They've done their 20 years and they're now in a position where they get a regular check comes in, and they can cruise on that. Retired, they're on a pension, they have a boat, and they quite often find that their pension actually goes further when they're cruising. They're not in any rush, they're very frugal, they're very budget minded, but they have enough, and that's one way of cruising. That sounds good. Number 3, they're on a sabbatical. They've taken a year or so off, and they're on a mission to get around the world or to sail a particular area, and they've got their life ready for them when they go back. So that's another area where you find cruisers. Number 4 would be independent income, or independent land income. So they've invented something, they've created something, they've got a land-based business still going that's paying them, or they've sold part of it off and getting a return on the other half. They've got rental properties, which that rent's covering their cruising costs, or they've got a large sum of money, or they've got some dividends coming in on a regular basis that allows them to cruise. Number 5, this is fairly common, and that's those that have worked really hard. They've just worked and saved all their life, and they've got to a stage where they can either they're freehold with their house, they can rent it out, and they've also got enough savings that they can then just head off and do what they like. Number 6, these are quite often trades or professions, and what they do is they've got a boat and they'll sail for a certain amount of time, and then they'll put the boat aside and on a hard or in a secure marina, and then they will head off for a short-term contract. It could be a couple of months or a year, and they'll work hard, save hard, and then they'll come back and continue cruising until they get another contract, and they can go off again and do that. Right, number 7, the she'll be right. Let's head off now, and we'll see what happens in a year or two. Yep, this works. Generally younger people. That's what we did, and I'll talk more about what happened. So the number 7 is probably where this video is aiming at. 1 to 6 is obvious, they've already got their income coming in. Number 7 is sort of, you're casting off you go. You've probably got a couple of years of money in savings. So soon enough, your balance is getting low, and you're going, dang, God, what can I do? I've got to start looking around for work. So if you're in a country that you speak the language, allows you to work, in other words, you're legally allowed to work there, then this is not so hard. You can do what you did before, or try something new. However, once you leave your home country, it's quite unusual to find a country that will just allow you to work. The choice is always to do illegal work, but that runs a risk. Not many countries will just allow anybody to come in and start working. Most of them require a work visa of some sort. So what to do? Well, if you've got a skill that other cruisers require, such as rigging, sail repairs, mechanical, engineering, electronics, hairdresser, beautician. There are options to work for other cruisers. Unfortunately, most other cruisers will be like you. They're on a budget. No matter where their income comes from, they're going to be on a budget of some sort. So getting them to pay for your services, it has to be fairly like an emergency work, and that's not always available. Also, cruisers tend to help each other when you're out there in remote places and something goes wrong. You'll generally find that people will rally around and provide support for you. You wouldn't want to go in there and say, well, it's going to cost you X amount of dollars if you want my time on there, because it's probably not going to be accepted. There are some other more wealthier cruisers out there, those that are perhaps on a mission to get to a certain place within a certain time, who are willing to pay. This is totally different when you hit a marina. When you come into a marina, there's sort of an expectation that you're going to start paying for services. Mainly everything's broken down outside. They've made a repair and they've come in and they need to get it fixed properly. So you can start charging when you're in a marina. The problem is, if you're in a country that doesn't allow you to work, then you sort of have to do it very quietly. So that's all the bad news. The good news is there are actually plenty of opportunities out there to make money while you're cruising. We've had to do that. So some of the opportunities that are out there are obviously there's internet-based income. There's Patreon and YouTube and blogs or whatever. They can be done, but they're also very competitive, and it takes a very long time to get yourself up to where you're going to afford yourself, where it can fund your cruising lifestyle. There's just general photography, writing, videography for those with the right skills and contacts. This is where I said earlier, you need to set some of the stuff up before you leave shore, so you have someone back on land who can look after the nitty-gritty of the details of getting your stuff out there on a regular basis, or submissions. Again, trying to find internet access while you're cruising is difficult at times. Opportunities is, there's jewellery making, soft good making, making things for other cruisers. All these are possible, along with your trades are possible as well, or your refrigeration, electrical, engineering, hairdressing, all these, painting, all these skills are readily usable out there. But again, you just have to be careful where you're using them and how you're using them. But the good thing is you don't need a lot of money to cruise. So where you might have to work, 2 or 3 weeks a month back on the land to afford to live for a month, you could probably find that one job will go quite a long way when you're cruising. One of the other sources of income could be something like opening up your boat for Airbnb or something similar. We've done this in the past and it's worked very well. So the other one is paying crew. It's not charter work, it's where they sign on as crew and they pay for that privilege, I guess. There are legalities around it, and you need to be aware of what they are for each country that you visit and leave. It's worked for us and we've been quite happy with it, and we'll do it again. Finding a niche market somewhere. You're kind of on in a unique position being on a sailboat. You sort of, if you're coming into a community or a bay and you want to stay, then there's a community there. Rather than just being a tourist or someone who's out there on that foreign boat, getting involved in the community in some way opens up the community and opens up friendships and all sorts of opportunities. And if you can work in a way, if you can see what they've got, you're in a kind of unique situation. You're a bridge between their world and your world, and if there are things that either side can benefit from, then that's something you could help facilitate, basically trade of some sort. The other way to make money is, and it goes back to the previous one, but it's on its own, is the internet. And it's something you discover again, and it's again because it's not the internet that you're probably familiar with back on land where you come from. It's an internet that's based around scratchy cards, top-up cards, cell phone towers, and where on earth, and wireless networks from your cell phone at your other computers and things. We've spent so many days hunting down internet, finding scratchy cards, scratching them off, putting them on. They come in data rates or times or minutes, which means that you don't have that much time, especially these days. And you're also hunting around for an anchorage or mooring that will give you decent access, or you're having to go to internet cafes all the time, which again is more expensive because they just don't let you have the internet for free. You have to go and buy something. And so the internet, when you're cruising, can be quite a bind to the shore, to the land. It's like having a chain to the land. You're sort of chained within a certain distance, because if you're out of cell phone reception, you're not going to get internet. So basically it's line of sight of a cell phone tower. Fortunately they're fairly common, but on the other hand, they're not in every place, and speeds are slow. So if you're trying to run a business off the internet, it can be difficult. And again, this is where that preparation coming in beforehand, where you're setting up things on shore to look after the day-by-day activities of an internet business are really essential. Trying to set the whole thing up from scratch while you're cruising is going to be difficult. It does work. We do know people that are successfully cruising doing this, but again, they've had things sorted out landside, so that they can actually run a business remotely, because quite often you're out of action for days and days before you can get onto the internet again. Right, if you've got kids on board, they are wonderful at finding other kids in communities, and all of a sudden a community seems to open its doors to you very readily when you have kids on board. We've found with our kids that coming into community, you get offers all the time just because of your kids. Obviously it's not a long-term solution, but it is something to be aware of. And again, once you're in a community, you'll find that people are very generous with what they do have. Trading your own time and skills, not physical goods, but your own time and skills that you have. One of the biggest limits to cruising is obviously your money. How much money do you have? And any chance to reduce that money is less money you have to earn. And a good way of doing it, a big part of your budget will probably be food in some way. If you're willing to give your time and skills to a group, you'll find that things happen. You'll be invited out places. You'll get to experience the local culture in a way that just anchoring out in the bay and just looking at it is not going to give you. You'll also be fed and watered. It's not something that you think, oh, geez, I'm going to go in there because I'm hungry. It's something that just happens. It's a win-win situation for everybody. So if you do have the skills to effect repairs to things that they have, or to help them in any way, then certainly being able to, it certainly helps open up a community to you. And sort of some of the remoter places certainly do need help in terms of repairing things that are broken. So our own choices. What have we done since in 8 years since we've been cruising and without any sort of land-based income? For us, it was we were number sevens. We didn't want to wait. We couldn't wait too much longer. We had enough money to buy the boat we've got, plus a couple of years savings. Our oldest son wanted to go to university a little bit earlier than we were expecting, and he was clever enough to get in a year and a bit earlier. So that instantly ate up our savings. And so what have we done since then to continue our cruising? Well, we've worked in a marina. I've worked in a marina as an electrician, a marine electrician. I wasn't never very comfortable with that, because there's always a niggle in the back of my mind. If I get caught or someone dobbers me in or doesn't like me, then I'm in trouble. So I did that for a short time, and then we thought, right, let's do something else. Plus, in a marina, you're paying the marina to be there to look for work, so you can pay the marina. It's sort of like this endless cycle that you don't really get ahead of. I did short-term contracts. I'd fly out for up to a month or to 5 months, I think, and work away, which was good. It's extremely good money. It's very good money. And it got us back on top of things, back on top of Tiare's maintenance, and we could afford to help the oldest through his university, and also finish off the education, online education for our other two boys. Unfortunately, working these short-term contracts for good money tend to be in quite hostile areas, and it wasn't always pleasant. And I also didn't like being away from home. for that sort of amount of time. The other things I've done is I used to own a cooperage, wine barrels and that type of thing, and so I did some consulting work for a vineyard or a winery in Thailand, which was nice. Well, I'm in Japan now, where we have I have a work visa here, so I've been able to do repairs and maintenance to yachts around the area. We've opened up the boat to Airbnb. We also have people come on for sort of like hang out on the boat moments, which pays. It's not much, but it's nice, and everything little bit helps. I'm also working for a company called Robship, which is soft goods for sailors. So I've been developing their online presence and their branding and helping develop new products and market and that type of thing. It's been a lot of fun as well. Again, also my wife's working remotely for an online chandlery as well. One of the other areas that you can possibly, that I didn't mention before, and is contacting NGOs and seeing what options are available. If you're cruising remote places, then maybe they need some help, and happy to pay for a small amount so you can get supplies to places or pick up stuff or whatever. It's something I've thought about but never looked into. What we've learnt out of all this is that you can't just it's very hard to have one single income stream. It's much better to have several, and this is what you'll find. You'll be doing a bit of this and a bit of that and a bit of that, and all together, one will dry up and the other one will come on. But altogether it will end up to being something that you can actually survive on and cruise for an extended period of time. So far it's working for us. So I guess like casting off and going out, it's like any leap. It's kind of it's scary and exhilarating, and you're very full of unknowns and fears. But that's like life. Like anything you try in life, it's going to be new and unknown until you get out there and give it a go. And then all of a sudden, those fears, you start understanding them, and they don't become fearful so much. There are things that you just deal with. And it's the same with casting off and trying to find an income. You will, the skills that you have now, you'll develop them even further, and in new ways, and you'll develop new skills, and you'll see things in a new light that will enable you to hopefully put things together in a way that will ensure that you can continue cruising.
Tied